But nonetheless, thank you for being here, Paul, Yaron, and everyone attending here. This is going to be a FuruRadio around lending. So I guess we'll just start with you guys. If you want to just introduce yourself and maybe share a little bit about your project, Paul and Yaron.
Sure, Yaron, I'll let you go. Let you go first.
Okay. Thank you, and also Furucombo guys. Thank you for having me. I'm Yaron. I'm founder of B Protocol. I'm also core member in the Risk DAO. So my background in crypto started around 2016. I finished my PhD in computer science. I co-founded the Kyber Network, was the first CTO there around 2017 till 2019. B Protocol is mostly about backstopping liquidation in DeFi markets. And also Risk DAO is kind of a sub-DAO of B Protocol that gives risk analysis to lending markets. And recently we also announced how the two will work together, where B Protocol is working on having on-chain Risk Oracle to help automated risk monitoring and analysis.
Great, and on my side, I'm the co-founder and CEO of Morpho Labs. So Morpho Labs is a company contributing to the Morpho protocol, and the Morpho protocol is a lending protocol. So a lending protocol that is built on top of existing lending protocols, which is a bit exotic, but still interesting, because basically what Morpho is doing is optimizing the rates of AAV or compound. So basically, you have Morpho compound, which is a layer on top of compound, for AAV, which is a layer on top of AAV. And that is going to provide the exact same experience. So users literally lend and borrow as they would on compound and AAV, with the same risk parameters and the same liquidity. But they get the opportunity to be matched peer-to-peer with another pair in order to experience better rates. So the small intuition about that, but we'll have the time to discuss, is that when you go to AAV, you have a 1% APY to lend, a 3% APY to borrow, while on Morpho, you'd be able to experience 2%, so the APY, which is in the middle of the spread of AAV. And for my background, I've done distributed algorithms and math before being into crypto, and joined the space in 2016. And as I was still studying, and progressively went into DeFi to finally build Morpho. And of course, thank you, Furucombo, for having us today.
Awesome. Yeah, you bet. Thank you both for the introduction. So, Yaron, before we get into the questions here, I just want to, because you guys started off as like a lending protocol, now you've kind of, it sounds like, switched to more of a Risk Oracle or Risk DAO. So how come you guys decided to make that change? And then in terms of the old B protocol lending stuff, is that discontinued now, or you're still continuing those like vaults that you had?
So the B protocol started maybe a bit similar to Morpho.
Oh, I think we might have lost you there for a second, Yaron.
Yes, we can't hear you anymore.
Still nothing.
Oh,
there we go. There we go.
Yeah.
Got you back.
Okay. So B protocol started as an interface to Compound and MakerDAO, and yeah, this is also how we integrate. We were featured also on Furucombo. It was kind of similarly, maybe to Morpho, but with very different angle, where we are mostly try to focus on, kind of securing better liquidation mechanism for the platforms, but in some of, kind of very, implicit way, in order to secure the platforms, we had to provide alternative interface. We did get, like a nice TVL, like $300 million at peak, but it didn't really catch. So we decided to focus mostly on the backstopping, like pulling liquidity towards liquidation, without providing the actual user interface to the systems. And then from there, we are kind of trying to sell risk mitigation solution to lending markets. However, many of the lending markets out there, didn't even understand what the risk was. So we decided to start also the Risk DAO and, provide consultancy on risk of lending markets. So yeah, that's kind of the B protocol story.
Cool. Yeah, thanks for that, Yaron. Yeah, I just wanted to get a little bit more insight into kind of your journey and why you guys decided to pivot. So I think that makes sense. And then from Morpho, it sounds like you guys are maybe like the, more capital efficiency. So like the Uniswap V3 of lending, I guess.
Yeah, I guess you could call it that way, in the sense that we are optimizing for capital efficiency, which has been, a lack, like something that Aave and Compound had not solved at the time. I think we like to say that, the Morpho protocol as it is now is just the first step, and our goal at Morpho is to make lending more advanced and more efficient in general. And the first product that we released is a peer-to-peer layer on top of lending protocols that enables further efficiency, better rates, and also enable user to have better rates while preserving the same risk parameters and the same liquidity. But we like to mention that this is just a first step in the Morpho ambition.
Gotcha. Cool. So yeah, we can get in more as to what you guys are working on and maybe releasing in the future. But first, let's kind of just start off with, what's the state of the lending market currently in crypto? What are kind of the barriers to entry? What do we see just in the general scheme of things? What are your thoughts on where the market sits and maybe the problems that you have, the good things that there are in lending currently, and, kind of what, we're going to see maybe in the next year or so in terms of developments here, just in the market in general.
Yaron, do you want to take this one?
Yeah, sure. So I think now, even prior, right? I mean, like the last weekend was kind of traumatic with the USDC pegging, but even long before that, there's kind of clear trend because API and yields in the traditional markets are rising. So we see kind of contraction, and like TVLs are shrinking in the DeFi market. So obviously it's like one trend that will last for a year or probably a few years maybe. So because prior to that in DeFi summer, it was kind of DeFi was the venue for attractive yields. This is no longer the case. But might change, and this is also something now many projects are working on, projects to introduce real world assets and real world yield into DeFi, and that's so this is one maybe exciting direction where the market will go. Also, like right now, most of the lending markets are not fixed terms, right? It's like variable interest rate, just deposit when you want, withdraw when you want. And, so this is like very basic lending primitive, but it's not like how the real world works. And it's not like, probably not what, real people want. So, we saw some experiments with fixed term interest lending markets. I think it's also interesting direction and hope it will grow. And generally right now, when the market goes up, we see some action when users maybe want to open a long position on ETH or Bitcoin. Now when the market goes down, so typically DeFi people don't really use it for short. So we see mostly, some yield farming activity of borrowing staked ETH versus ETH, or some stable versus stable just to get some API on some liquidity mining. So I think this kind of, like the current state, and I think, like exciting things for the future there is, of course, so fixed term lending, real world assets, and of course, from our perspective, also better risk management.
Yeah, and maybe I can add color to that. I think I mostly agree with what Yaron described. Like the first era of lending protocols is kind of very experimental still. Like I don't believe. Like I think what Aave and Compound have succeeded in doing is amazing. Like it's great, but I don't think it's going to scale. The model they have is not going to scale to the billions of users in the long term. And I think that we're probably going to need more resilient, more autonomous primitives that come into play in the side of lending. Maybe it's going to come with fixed rates. Fixed rates are like the fact that on Compound and Aave you can withdraw and supply when you want or borrow when you want is a very, very big requirement that is surprisingly well fitting the DeFi space as it is now. But I wonder that in the next years, as players become more and more serious and more closer to what we have in the traditional finance space, I'm expecting that this product requirements that has worked very well so far may not be as strong in the years to come. So what I would expect from the space is probably additional resiliency. Like, of course, we've seen like with recent event and the unfortunate hack of the Euler protocol that happened yesterday, that lending protocols are like lending pools are very, very complex beasts, like to many regards, complex in terms of smart contracts, complex in terms of like the markets, the collateral that are used, like is the collateral sufficiently liquid? Can it be liquidated in all sort of market conditions? And I think that it does not scale in terms of product because it does not scale in terms of risk. And because you can't add the collateral that you want, because every time you play on the protocol, it's going to change the risk for everybody. To me, it can't be governed indefinitely by a decentralized network of token holders and can't scale in the long term. So I'm confident that we probably going to need to review in the long term the primitives that are used. And yeah, so this is according to me what's going on, what's going to happen in the coming years.
Cool. Thank you both for the input. So, I mean, I guess it sounds like the main problem or concern right now in lending is around risk. And then because we're kind of in that first iteration, we may see things, I guess, change towards catering to, larger investors or more commercialized investors. So yeah, you guys both kind of mentioned the Euler hack. I just kind of want to brief that the lending protocol did have, I believe, 6 audits, yet there was still that inherent risk. So, with that kind of risk level, will we kind of see these large investors coming in, or do we have to how are we going to kind of deal with the risk factor, before we can see, an increase in activity in terms of lending protocols and maybe large money moving into the space?
Maybe I can start and and then give leave the floor to Yaron on this one. But my personal view is that like a smart contract is incredibly hard to code right and to maintain right when it comes to a lending protocol. Like, it's extremely complicated. And because it's complicated, it's very risky. And it's even more risky and even more, I would say, operationally complicated to operate it in a decentralized way. Strangely, because people tend to think that because it's decentralized, it's going to be more resilient. I think it's true for the financial settlement side of things and infrastructure. But when it comes to risk management, what we tend to see happening is like those protocols are going to pay advisors, which they should do, because like they're not, the token holders in themselves are not skilled to actually make the right choice, and the token holders are just going to follow the advice of the experts. And yeah, it just feels like because of the complexity, at some point it's almost, I don't want to say inevitable, but it's very likely that such risk happen. And when we look at like the big success one of the big success of DeFi has been obviously Uniswap. And I think one of the core principle of Uniswap was minimalism, right? The first, like Uniswap V1, Uniswap V2 are very, very small code base, like easily formally proven. And I think that this is what you can expect from a lending, a DeFi primitive. It's like a code that is easily auditable and easily formally proven, that you know for sure that there is no smart contract risk at all, and you know that there is as little market risk as possible, and that you can operate a financial service on top. So I think that investors should just rethink what they value instead of, being fear the whole space in general. I think it's just a matter of like we should learn from this. And the Arlo team was one of the best in the space. Like I can tell you, like the guys out there were super smart. But what happened to them is just the proof that it's too much complexity for a group of human beings to be one, because we're talking about being 100% sure that nothing is wrong. And I think this is just too hard at this stage for such a big code base, etc. So maybe with years, I'm becoming more and more convinced that a DeFi protocol should be minimalist, and that should operate and settle a financial service on chain. And I think investors should reorient their investment thesis rather than being scared, because there is value in DeFi, obviously, for many different reasons that we don't like. We can discuss if needed. But yeah, I think that we just need to probably think differently on how to invest.
Yeah, so I share, like a lot of the thoughts that Paul raised, but also, yeah, like one big difference between lending markets and DEXs, for example, is that they do require ongoing operation, mostly because the market change. I mean, no matter how you twist it, operation will be needed to kind of manage the risk there. And I think because ongoing management, is needed, then they kind of seize the opportunity and, push for some code updates along the way. And yeah, I think, I think over time, code will become more stable. Also the recent attack was a good example of, something that happened because of a new feature that no one, really needed. But, I think that you will get some standards over time, and people will just fork code that work. But this will not solve the ongoing, maybe economic risk management or market monitoring. And this is exactly where B protocol kind of try to help. And also by making it more automated, I think it will also kind of decrease the appetite to code changes, because if you don't have, ongoing DAO votes, then every code change will also be a huge event that, they will have to, kind of a step that we'll have to only rarely do. As opposed to now that, you have to make parameter changes probably monthly even. So, like along the way, you upgrade, some stuff and add small features and then eventually get wrecked.
Yeah, for sure. There's definitely increasing complexity, which can be a problem. Most of the lending protocols are continually increasing in their robustness. Sending out new upgrades and as we've seen Abbey's on V3, we got Maker with tons of vaults when they just started with one. Compound is moving to a new version as well, so lots of complexity there. I don't want to scare everyone away though from lending. Maybe you guys just want to highlight, some positive sides with the market that we have currently. And again, speaking to the robustness, a lot of the major players haven't had major hacks, which is a good thing. We haven't seen a huge problem with Aave or with Maker that I can remember in recent memory. So, they're fairly safe and they have robust insurance policies put in place. So maybe you guys can just highlight kind of what are some of the positives with the market we have right now.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think you're right. It was pretty negative overall, but I think it's obviously this huge upside in building decentralized financial primitives. Like in the end, settlement is going to be cheaper. Transparency is going to enable less fraud and also more equality in access to the financial service. And then it's already a reality with obviously Aave and Compound that have been mostly very secure. Same for obviously Uniswap, Maker, etc. I think I can slightly talk about Morpho on this topic. We've performed no less than 18 audits in total. Which I think makes it the most audited protocol in the space. We've been, spending a lot of efforts into formal proving the protocol and providing extensive research and formalization around the protocol. And I think with this, you could be fairly confident going into those protocols. And I mean, we, as a whole, the space is, it takes some losses throughout like the history of DeFi, but in the end, every time we're getting stronger, every time we're getting more resilient, and I believe that if we succeed in learning from those mistakes that we've done, we can definitely outpass traditional finance, or at least complete traditional finance in a much longer extension. But yeah, so I think it's like you have the two sides. Like one side we have to learn from our mistakes, but on the other hand, like what we're building is incredibly exciting and it's probably going to be, a breakthrough for the financial system. So we think we should keep both in mind to move forward.
Yeah, I think also worth mentioning that, the DeFi give rise to, like the site transparency and all the other things that Paul mentioned. Of course, is composability is also a key factor here. I think, Morpho itself is kind of a good example on how composability actually, kind of helping, right, Morpho users themselves, right? Just by the fact that DeFi is composable, they are able to offer Compound and Aave users better terms than Aave and Compound users are getting from the platforms there. This is not something you can usually do, like in the traditional closed market.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And I mean, just to kind of reiterate again why we're all here. There's many people in the world that don't have access to, financial systems, financial tools, and this gives kind of the ability for anyone to use these protocols. Generally, you don't have to be KYC'd with a bank. You don't have to, go on their terms. The terms are available, and they're pretty much going to be the same for everyone, right? So it's really awesome to kind of have that flexibility here in the space. Great. Yeah, no, I think that highlights the benefits really well of the lending markets and DeFi in general. So you guys talked a little bit about real world assets, which I think is pretty interesting, or maybe, because right now with lending, it's generally, collateralized. So you have to provide some asset and then you can borrow off that asset, typically lower than the collateral asset, so you're covered in the event of a liquidation. So what new technologies or developments are going to kind of elevate lending to the next level? We briefly talked about real world assets. What about like uncollateralized assets, or what other developments do you guys see taking lending to the next level?
Yeah, so because also mentioned before, the fixed term loans are probably, I think, inevitably it will dominate the lending markets. Like eventually also in DeFi. Real world assets, I think right now, maybe the biggest challenge there is to make it maybe more of a boomers market, right? Because like there's kind of in DeFi, maybe most people are not very tech savvy, but at least you have, at least in theory, it's very transparent, and you will always have some people who can take a look at it. But if we move to real world assets, with real world accounting, this is something that is very opaque, especially for developers, and very hard to follow. So I think, they will have to come with much stricter standards. I think there is room, and this is something that Morpho are doing for the interest rate optimization. Right now, the spreads are huge between borrowers and lenders. And of course, like from B protocol perspective, we see the whole thing of, risk management also is sort of a barrier, for innovation, because eventually it takes a lot of time for new protocols to prove themselves and to prove the risk management, which means that eventually innovation has to move quite slowly because you have to gain some reputation on your risk management and other factors.
Yeah, on my end, I think that from the real world asset perspective, I think that current lending providers are not built for that, but there is huge potential. Like obviously, DeFi has been a very closed space, not really connected to any real world activities so far. But this is the opportunity to have like on-chain credits, tokenized credits, whether it's through like state credits, but also more broader credits in general. And I think that the opportunity to bring those on-chain is the necessary step if we want to scale this space. However, I think the current models that were invented were mainly invented for liquid crypto leverage. And I don't think, because of the KYC requirements you have for certain types of securities, for example, it's not so easy to implement on a protocol, and it also can, has a lot of legal risk, especially on the side of the protocol builders. Like one of the reasons why you don't see so many securities being onboarded as tokenized assets in a permissionless protocols is that it bears a huge legal risk for the protocol builders. That said, it does not mean that we can't bring those assets on chain. It just means that probably we're going to need to rebuild a few of the primitives in order to be able to to onboard those assets.
For sure. Makes sense.
Yeah. I think here it's not. I mean, obviously, legal risk is one, even important factor. But I think, like one thing that FTX, Riero, all these guys prove to us is that, like non-transparent accounting in crypto will end up very badly. So, it will be very hard even for a new company to come and say, trust us, we are all backed by some Swiss bank account. Where like crypto users, they just unable to or not qualified to read all these balance checks and the accounting reports. So I think it's also something that we'll have to build very gradually in terms of transparencies, and we'll have to onboard people who can actually read these accounting reports.
Yeah, that's a really good point too.
Unfortunately, I have to hop off in a few minutes, but yeah, sorry, I interrupted you.
Yeah, no worries at all. Yeah, I mean, we can head towards the end here then. Yeah, no, I just wanted to kind of iterate again too, like, it'll be interesting to see where the market takes us. I'd like to see things like carbon credits on chain, lending, borrowing that. And of course, if you could do mortgages or, other large assets on chain, that could be interesting as well. But yeah, there's a lot of regulatory risk there. And then, developer trust and protocol trust and all that kind of stuff. So I think it is going to be a slow grind, but eventually we'll kind of see the market develop. So maybe I'll just flip over quick to, what are you guys building in the next year or so, or what new developments do you have internally that you're going to be releasing, maybe that you can share or want to talk about, and if there's nothing, what project are you most excited about that's going to be releasing here in the next year?
Yeah, so on the end of Morpho and Morpho Labs more specifically, so we spent the last months researching and working on lending in general, whatever, like broadly about like how do we do lending on chain, how do we make it as efficient as possible, and how do we make it like with as less risk as possible. And we don't have clearly, we don't have clearly one route we want to go to, at least not one that is public at the moment. But like we're actively researching what could be the best possible primitive for different use cases in lending. And yeah, so I think you can expect additional lending innovation from Morpho Labs, and we'll probably submit that to the Morpho DAO if it makes sense.
Yeah, so from the protocol side, so right now we are mostly focusing on the Risk Oracle, where the idea is to put, just raw risk data on chain. So it's not really about taking decisions for the lending market DAOs, but just providing the data on chain. So this gives rise, both to permissionless lending markets, can give rise to more automated market risk analysis. Like the recent weekend events are a good example where, it typically takes days for DAOs to respond and change the risk parameters. So by providing, like key indicators such as market liquidity, DEX liquidity, volatility of assets, just by putting it on chain in, like sort of a decentralized and a trusted manner, could really, bring automated risk management, like a long way forward. And so make it also more transparent, because people will kind of know upfront, look, if the DEX liquidity will go to that level, we will change these parameters, instead of having some back channel DAO discussions on, okay, USDC is down, what should we do? should we do that and that, right? And like eventually maybe take a decision with 48-hour delay period. So yeah, we like expect that putting all this data on chain will allow markets to make more automated risk management strategies, and this is what we are working on.
Awesome, awesome. So Yaron, that Risk Oracle, is that live for people to use right now?
No, we will probably launch like in 2 months, like the first version, which will be initially completely centralized, but like more like as a reference where we just put data on chain. But then over time we'll make it more decentralized, and of course more, we'll put also more data there. So right now we are still working on the tools for everything and to make it more decentralized.
Awesome, awesome, perfect. All right, I think we can call it here. That was kind of just a brief introduction to the lending market and kind of the problems that are currently existing and where we think things are going to head. It's definitely a very robust topic. You could talk to hours about it. Just in terms of if people want to learn more about Morpho or Beat Protocol, maybe you guys just want to shout out the protocol a bit. Where can they learn more? Yeah, Paul, if you want to go ahead.
Sure. Yeah, so for us, it's morpho.xyz, and you'll find all the information you need here. And Morpho Labs has a Twitter account, which is @MorphoLabs. So as simple as that.
Yeah. So Beat Protocol is bprotocol.org, and also the Risk DAO is riskdao.org. And yeah, you can find links there to our Twitter channel and Discords. Yeah, that's us.
Awesome, awesome. And I appreciate both of you taking the time to be here and dealing through these technical difficulties. So Paul, Yaron, thank you. Hope to see you on FuruRadio again. And for people that are new to Furucombo, it's a DeFi aggregator. You can also find lending protocols on here and uniquely manage your positions with Flash Loan. So definitely check us out as well if you haven't, and hope to see you all at the next one. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Blaster. Bye.
Thanks,
guys. Take care.
Bye.